Unit 5, Data Retrieval. Lesson: Reading database tables. Lesson overview. In this lesson you will learn how to retrieve information on database tables and how to read data from them. An overview of techniques that allow you to access multiple database tables will also be covered. Business example. You need to evaluate data from database tables. Database access. SQL is the abbreviation of Structured Query Language, a language that enables define, change, and read access to database tables. Every relational database system has a native SQL, which is unfortunately database specific. In contrast, OpenSQL is a SAP defined database independent SQL standard for the ABAP language. Database read access overview. You use the select ABAP statement to perform an extraction of data from a database tables. You specify the columns or the fields from, you specify the table, into, you specify a target, where, and you specify a condition. Which lines should I read? It could be single or it could be several lines. And in the select fields or which columns, I specify which columns I want from my database table. You use the OpenSQL statement select to program database read access. The select statement contains a series of clauses, each of which has a different task. Amongst other things, the select clause describes which fields of the table are to be read. The from clause names the source, database table or view from which the data is to be selected. The into clause determines the target variable into which the selected data is to be placed. The where clause specifies the columns of the table that are to be selected. For information about other clauses, refer to the keyboard documentation for the select statement. Reading single records. The select single statement allows you to read a single record from the database table and not a whole table. To ensure a unique access, all key fields must be filled in the where clause. The client field is an exception in this case. If the specification is missing, the current client will automatically be taken. So you don't need to specify the client, although you create it as a key in the transparent table. You don't need to specify when you use the select statement. You use the asterisk to specify that all fields of the table row to be selected are to be read. For example, you have select single to select a single record, and you specify which columns I want from my database table. In this case, caret ID, con ID, FL date, seat max, and seats occupied. From, I specify my transparent table, sFlight. Into, I specify a target. In this case, I previously declare a local structure. Type the transparent table sFlight. This means all my fields are going to be the same, where I specify a value for the key fields, for the car ID, the con ID, and the FL date. If you only want a specific selection of columns, you can list the required fields instead of the asterisk. You use the into clause to specify the target variable to which the data record is to be copied. If the system finds a suitable record, then the return value site sub rc equals 0. In the into clause, you must then name a target structure variable that has the same structure as the field list. That is very important. That is, it contains the fields of the field list in the same order. Only the corresponding field types have to match. The names of the target structure fields are not taken into account. An alternative to specifying the target structure is to list the corresponding target fields in the into clause. For example, you can declare several variables and then use into, and between parentheses you specify all your variables. If you want to use a structure variable for receiving the read record, which has fields with the same names as the fields in the target list but has a different structure, additional fields, different order of fields, it makes sense to use the corresponding fields of ABAP statement addition. Make sure that the corresponding field types are also the same. The advantages of this variant are: this construction is easy to maintain, since extending the field list or target structure does not require other changes to be made to the program, as long as there is a field in the structure that has the same name, and if possible, the same type as well. So let's go into the system and let's practice some select statements and using the corresponding into ABAP statement. So this time, let's create a local program or a local object. So let's navigate to the object navigator. We press enter and it's taking a while to load. There. So inside the object navigator, let's create a local object this time. So we navigate to local objects and we hit enter. This time we are not going to save our program in our ABAP course package. So now in our local objects, if we don't have the programs folder yet, then we create a new program by choosing create program. And if we already have the programs folder, we right click on programs, create. So this is practicing select statements. So let's name this C select statements program. Let's give it a title, practicing select statements, and as always it is an executable program. We save. Remember, this is a local object. The difference between local objects and the other ones is that we cannot transport local objects to other systems. So now let's start by declaring some parameters in the screen. So we can ask for an airline ID, a flight number, and a date, and we can use those parameters to execute select statements to database tables. So let's declare a parameter type. I'm going to use the SFlight table to select my data from, so I'm going to use its fields also. So I want the type, the car ID. I select car ID from the drop down menu. This drop down menu only appears in some versions of the SAP NetWeaver. So if you have the latest version installed, then you can see this drop down menu. If not, you don't get this drop down menu. So you select car ID for one parameter, and then I declare also a con ID type as flight con ID, and a third parameter for the date type as flight FL date. So I'm going to ask for these values: an airline ID, a flight number, and a date. And I'm going to declare a local structure named as flight, type the transparent table as flight. I can double click to navigate to the transparent table, and I can take a look at its fields. So I can see this transparent table has 4 key fields: the client field that we never specified, the car ID, the car ID, and the FL date, or the airline code, the flight number, and the flight date. So I want to ask these 3 values to the user, so I can use them as my key to select data. So I go back to my program. Now I'm going to extract a single record. So I'm going to use select single, and then I use the asterisk sign to specify that I want all the columns or all the fields of the table, but I want the single record and all of its columns from the SFlight table into, I'm going to store this single record in my local structure, where my car ID from my table equals my parameter, and where the con ID equals my con ID parameter, and where the FL date equals my FL date parameter. So if I find a record matching this criteria, I check using the if size sub RC field system equals 0. If that is true, else if that is not true. So if that is true, it means that I found a single record matching the criteria. So I'm going to write it to the screen. So I'm going to write the ls flight car ID the con ID the date and the other columns, the price, the currency, the plane type, the seats max, the seats occupied, and the payment sum. So I write all this to my screen. And if I didn't find a single record matching that criteria, I'm going to output a message to the screen using the message or a dialog message. I specify the message, no records were found. Type, I want it to be displayed as a type information message. So I'm going to save and activate my program. I had errors. I'm going to display the errors to see what's wrong. Oh, it says that no component exists with the name date, but there is a similar date. If I double click the error, this could be helpful. It takes you to the line that it has the error. So in this case, it took me to this line. So I see that I'm missing here the FL date. I check my syntax one more time, and now the syntax is correct. So I now can activate. And now my program activates successfully. So let's change the text elements. Remember, for the parameters, we want a better displayment, so we use airline code, flight number, and date. And I activate my text elements. I go back to my program and I run my program. So now I can choose an airline code using the search help. Let's look for an American Airlines. A search help also for the flight number. Let's use flight 17, and let's use this date. I already looked into the table and I saw that this date has a matching record. So I execute. Oh, the system says no records were found. So there is no matching date for this criteria. Let's take a look at the table contents so we can use a date that matches our criteria. How can we do that? So we can navigate to the SE11 or the ABAP dictionary transaction in a new window. So we can use this icon that creates a new session. And now I navigate to my ABAP dictionary and I take a look at my S-Flight table. So I click on display and I click on contents, and I execute without filling any of these filters, just to list all of its contents without filters. And now I can see, for example, my car ID, my con ID, and my date. So I'm going to use this date. So it's the 1st of February of 2012. So let's go back to our program. Let's remember that date, the 1st of February. And I navigate to my program. I click on change display. I'm already editing. Yeah, sorry, I forgot I had it in the other window. So I can go ahead and close this window now. And now in my program, I can use the date that I know for sure exists, and I execute. So now my program retrieves the found record. As you can see, it's just one single record. Let's go back to the program. Now let's practice just selecting some specific fields, or just some columns of the table and not every column. So I'm going to declare some variables here. The car ID type, the same type, the con ID type. This is giving me an error because I forgot the 2 points. Now we're okay. Type S flight, con ID, the FL date type S flight. So you can see I don't worry about the types because I just make reference to fields from a table. And the price type so I use the select single, and then I specify that I only want the car ID, the con ID, the FL date, and the price from the same table into, and between parentheses I specify my variables. In the same order that I write in the select single statement. And I specify the where clause the same, where it matches my parameters. Remember, we can use the and in the selects, or the or, with whatever you need to use. And where the FL date equals the same parameter. So if that is found, we always check. It's always good practice to check the size up here after I select equals 0, else I output the same message, and if not, I just write them to the screen. If everything was okay, and these were LB car ID, LB con ID, LB FL date, and local variable price. I'm gonna comment this so it doesn't get in the way of our code, and I activate and I run my program. I can type the values that I already know, 17, and the date. Remember, it was the same date. And as you can see, it also works. It displays my airline, my flight number, the date, and the price. One more way we can do this is using the into corresponding fields statement. How do we do that? So let's declare a local structure, type the structure we created earlier. Remember, for our flight report we used the same structure, and we use the select single from sFlight, and this time we use into corresponding fields of, and we specify our target where the same conditions apply. My pcon ID and my FL date. So this time all the fields that match the same fields of this structure are going to be transferred from the selected data, and then we can print it to the screen the same way we print, using the write and checking if the size sub RC equals 0.